Okay, wait. Let's just. I'm just gonna say a few more things before we start. So this podcast is brought to you by Mutual Lux Cakes. Um, this okay. So yeah, Mucha Cakes. You can check out Mucha on Facebook. That's MIUCCIA, and also on Instagram at hello.mucha. That's at HELLO dot MIUCCIA. So we have these monster cookies right now that you're seeing on screen.
That's
We
good.
recently got featured. Sayang, kung pag nandito kasi yung mga guests, meron kaming mutual talaga. We also have donuts, pero right now cookies yung pinaka madami because hopefully hindi ko pa nababasa kung anong sabi ni Duterte about the ECQ eh. Hopefully, di ba? I don't know kung anong mangyayari. And let's see kung anong siguro after this podcast, I'm gonna be checking out kung anong mangyayari later on, and hopefully it's for the best. And also, speaking of the ECQ, this podcast and all of my episodes during the lockdown are all dedicated to the frontliners that we have and everybody who's sacrificing their time, their efforts, and their own health for us, so that we could return to whatever new normal is waiting ahead for everyone in planet Earth. And yan, yun muna. We're gonna go live with John Carl in a bit. Powerful Comics Man podcast. We're gonna go to OBB, Carla. Saglit, and then we're gonna start. All right. Woo!
No problem.
Welcome to the Powerful Comics Man podcast. I'm with John Carl Gaverza, author of
Hey.
The Spirits of the Philippine Archipelago. So, yun. What's up,
Yeah.
Carl? I'll just call you Carl,
Hey.
right? I'll just call you Carl.
Yeah, please just call me Carl. That's how everyone knows me.
All right. Okay, so how are you holding up in this ECQ situation right now?
Well, more time to write, I guess, and
That's great news.
research. So
Hmm.
I've been through like maybe 2,000 pages in the last few weeks.
Oh, wow. 2,000
Different.
pages?
Yeah. But it's something to do, right?
Well, that's fast. That's fast. Ang bilis na. 2,000 pages in 2 months during the ECQ, or since when?
Well, I mean, like, my brother's a law student, and he'll just say that that's nothing.
Really?
So, according to him, but yeah.
So the only book that I'm familiar na gawa mo is the one that we're gonna be talking about probably
Mhm.
more tonight, which is Spirits of the Philippine Archipelago. Teka, punta tayo dun sa Facebook page. So, okay, so can you tell us about this book? I think is this an indie independent effort from you, or what?
Yes, definitely. It's independent.
Mm-hmm.
The Spirits of the Philippine Archipelago book itself is a collection of fictional stories. Each story is based on a specific mythical creature and with their description. So I try to do different things with each story. Some of them are directly from an interview I had. One of the artists I had an experience with a wakwak in Cagayan de Oro, and he told
Ooh.
me a story, and I basically rewrote it, make it a little more exciting, but the backbone's still there. Others are just like legends and myths that no one really remembers or is very very hard to get to. Like, cause I I have to go to like libraries, try to get like very obscure sources, or sometimes the sources are expensive. Like there's this one book I want that's on Tagbanwa religion, and it's 8,000 pesos.
Mm-hmm.
So
What book is
I'd
that?
rather go to a library. Tagbanwa Religion and Society by Robert Fox.
Robert Fox.
Yes, I
That doesn't
remember.
sound Filipino. Why is he writing
No,
about that?
because a lot of researchers, like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the books I have, they weren't made by Filipinos. They were made by Americans,
Oh.
researching around the Philippines. Because let's face it, like you need money to study mythology because it's a topic that doesn't pay a lot.
Mm.
So if you go to the academe, like you have to really have your heart in it, like you dedicate your life to it. And there are a bunch in the Philippines. Alicia Magos, she does a lot of work in Central Panay, the Panay Bukidnon. Damiano Eugenio's Philippine Folk Literature series. If you can buy it, it's a really really great resource. She sources every story she has. F. Landa Hocano. Uh, I'll deal with him later. There's a bit of controversy with some of his work, and uh, Father Francisco Demetrio. Was it Francisco? Uh, Father Demetrio of what? Xavier University in Cagayan de Oro. He's a priest that did a lot of work on uh, folklore, folk beliefs, legends, and some myths.
Wow. So you went there personally to meet with these people in Cagayan de Oro?
No, no. I A lot of what I have is their written works.
Oh,
So
okay.
for like Father Demetrio, I had to get his Encyclopedia of Philippine Folk Literature from one of those Facebook buy and sell groups that I was lucky enough to find. Because otherwise, you have to go to the Xavier University, and they've been ignoring my messages for 2 years. So, yeah, I was lucky to find it.
Okay. Let's just go back a little bit. Start from the beginning. I was introduced to you the actual by Aswang Project, si Jordan Clark.
Yeah.
Parang he recommended uh you to me para i-guest, and we've been trying to get this on for more than a year now, right? so
Yeah,
pa-
yeah.
so
It's been a
finally,
while.
yeah, so hindi lang natutuloy, pero finally we are here. So let me just ask you, how why did you choose this topic for you to why does this interest you? 'Di ba? Paano ka napadpad dito sa mythology thing?
Uh, well, uh, growing up, I wasn't exposed to these kinds of things.
Mhm.
Like, I'm a city kid. I was raised on 90s Nickelodeon.
Okay.
Uh, that was my life. But in college, I took up linguistics, and we had one class for ethnolinguistics, if I remember right, where we had to interview uh, people based on different topics. And the topic that I got was the numeral system of the Northern Subanan language. That's a language spoken in Zamboanga. I was able to find an informant with one of my classmates. So we did an interview. It was very boring, very dry. Uh, so like during one of our breaks, he started talking to me about uh, like what was it like in Zamboanga, and he told me the story of the talon, the minamid talon and the tamad talon. These were two spirits or creatures from Zamboanga that I've never heard of before, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people have never heard of before. So
What was it again?
um, the Menamid Talon and the
Benamid.
Tamad Talon. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Thalon. And yeah. So talked about it. In that instant, I changed my topic. I did that instead, and uh, it was really interesting. So I carried that story with me eventually up until I had to do my thesis.
Mm-hmm.
And my thesis was the same thing. It was originally a different topic, but then I had the feeling like I didn't like that topic, and you can't enjoy something you hate. So I just switched back to mythology, trying to figure out everything I could. I It was exciting. I was able to do a lot of interviews with people, going through a lot of books, and it was a very eye-opening topic for me because I didn't realize how much myth, how much folklore was in the Philippines that isn't that people don't know. Like, I mean, everyone knows the aswang and the capre and the manannanggal. No one really knows for example, alibadut.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Maranao creature. It's like a manananggal, but it's the head, spine, and organs, and the head is backwards.
Backwards. Oh, so yun ang
Backwards.
pinagkaiba niya sa pinanggal ng Indonesia ba o Malaysia?
Penanggalan is Malaysian. Yeah,
Malaysian, di
and
ba?
there's like, and like this month is hashtag Manananggal, right?
Ah,
So
talaga? May
yeah,
nananggal. I didn't know
yeah.
that.
Go.
Okay.
People are doing a lot of art. It's really nice to see how it got going. Tapos there are like, well, I've cataloged maybe like 15 different kinds of manananggal like creatures.
Yeah.
So so yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I try to share it with my page and my book as much as I can. But it's like the book's kind of rough to do because I always try to have a Filipino artist do an illustration of the mythical creature, but I want
Mm-hmm.
to pay the artist fairly. So
Yeah.
it's like up and
That's great.
downs. If people buy the book, if people buy any of my products, it goes right back into either research or uh, commissioning artists.
Oh. Well, as an artist, I appreciate that. Yeah. That's great practice. So, one of the things that we talked about over chat before was you were I think you were set to uh to give a lecture about manananggals like what you described kanina. And I was like, "What? A lecture about manananggal?" No, parang parang you can I think you said about an hour of lecture about manananggal. So, what you can make a 1 hour lecture talking about just the manananggal. And that's really
Yeah.
parang nakakagulat for me, 'di ba? Parang I thought parang yung manananggal parang sa a woman that severs in half and then flies away with wings, 'di ba? Na bat wings,
Yeah.
and that's about it. So well, yung fetus eating fetus and everything sa pero
Yeah.
other than the popular na alam ng mga tao about Manananggal, 'di ba? Parang I don't know, parang nakagulat, ang dami pa palang pwedeng i-discuss about Manananggal. Can you talk about
Yeah.
a little bit of that?
Okay, so the first mention of a manananggal-like creature in the Philippines was done by Juan de Plasencia in 1589. And
Oh.
that creature is only the head and the organs. And it was called Magtatanggal. He got that story from Catanduanes.
Okay.
So uh, there's a lot of thought that there was an evolution from that to the manananggal we know today.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of uh, confusion about like, is a manananggal an aswang? Is it just another name for an aswang? But it's like all manananggal can be said to all be aswang, but not all aswang are manananggal.
Ah, okay.
So like, and there's this thought that these creatures uh, were spirits that were demonized by the Spanish. And I mean, the Spanish did a lot of demonizing of different spirits. But when you compare us to countries in Southeast Asia, like you
Mhm.
said, the Penanggalan in Malaysia,
Mhm.
the head of the woman with organs you can see in Cambodia, it's called the Ap. In Thailand, it's called the Krause. In Indonesia, it's called Leyak.
Mhm.
And in the Moluccan archipelago, it's the witches are called Keswange. So you
Mm.
can see like the similarities we have in Southeast Asia by the mythical halimaw aswang type creatures uh, we have in common.
Okay. So how did it evolve from just the head and the innards to well, I think our version is so the coolest version, 'di ba? As
Yeah.
'di ba? A half woman, half naked, naked
Mhm.
half woman with bat wings flying and
Yeah.
eating fetus with long tongue, 'di ba? So how did it evolve from just the head and the
There are a few schools of thought about that. Some people say that it was meant to disempower women in society
Really?
because
Oh.
the
Mhm.
Spanish thought like to be a woman, you have to like give birth, and it was your like uh, vagina parts that help make you a woman. So the separation of that would make uh, you not a woman. It
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the ways people think about it. Uh, Otherwise, there are stories where uh, to be a manananggal, and this is also true for aswang stories, you have to mix a special kind of ointment, and you put that ointment underneath your arms. It's made of chicken droppings and other things, and then
Wow.
you will have the power to become a manananggal. And like a lot of people think the manananggal like creatures are exclusively female, but there are also male manananggals. Some of them are called Iki or Ike from Quezon province.
Mm-hmm. Quezon province. You think that's the origin of the popular version of Manananggal?
Uh, No, that's just like one variation of the manananggal coming from a specific place. It's it's hard to trace because like the manananggal stories are spread all over, and then after that you have uh, like the Spanish coming in, so that their manananggal stories are influenced by that, and then in the southern part of the Philippines, you have Mindanao, and there's some folk Catholicism and folk Islam that are coming together to make these stories like localized and their own.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So, are there more obscure versions of the Manananggal aside from the popular that we see, the popular version that we see on movies and pop culture?
Yeah, a lot. There's one in Ilocos and Zambales called the Boroca. Its name there is derived from bruja, the Spanish for witch. So instead of bat wings, it has bird wings.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Pwede,
and it's
okay.
actually nicer, if I can say that, because there are stories where uh, it would abduct children, but it wouldn't eat the children. It would make their children housekeepers. But then again, it also would feed them liver. So I don't really know if you could call that good.
So, teka. So, they will kidnap children and then make them her helpers? Ganon?
Yeah, because they they live in mountains and like trees. Because a lot of Philippine mythical creatures can transform into different things and have specific houses in forests or mountains. Uh, so they need like there's sometimes they're like uh, monsters with their own society and farms and cities away from humans, and other ones they live individually, but like they live in caves, but the caves are dusty or something, so they have to kidnap kids. But regularly, the Baraka eats the hearts and livers of her victims.
Oh, ang cool nun, 'di ba? Parang there's a so you can create a story about two mananggals, one parang isang mabait and then isang evil mananggal. Ang ganda nun.
Yeah,
What's it called again? The good
Boroka.
Boroka. Oh,
Yeah,
we
I
need
mean
to write
it's
that
not all
down.
good. Yeah, it's
No.
not all good. Hi, it will kill a human, but yeah,
Pero it still
I'm just
severs. You can still kill the Boroka the same way uh, kup- uh, na kung paano patayin yung manananggal. Ganon.
yeah,
Ganon din yung
yeah.
kumbaga basically their parang disposition and their wings yun lang ang pinagkaiba.
Uh, Pretty much. Though there are, I mean, like again, complete variations. Where you hear it, who you hear it from. Uh, Sometimes the Barocca could have feet like a horse. Um,
Beat
I
like
mean,
a
again, like
horse. Wow.
yeah. So yeah, I mean,
And
like it
just like
depends
that, I
on where
have
you get the story from. Like the 4 feet like a horse thing is a folktale that was uh, taken down by Dean Fansler, one of the most prolific American uh, anthropologists. I think he was an anthropologist that took
Mhm.
down these stories. But the one with just a wings and the head of a woman is from Maximo Ramos's book, Creatures of Philippine Lower Mythology. So yeah, like as a writer, I go with what's cool because I never like I put the disclaimer: all my stories are fiction, so don't use them as reference. But I
Okay.
have references in case they want it. Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Si Jordan Clark is here. He says migrant workers within the Philippines are also responsible for transferring stories of the Manananggal. And Michaela
Yeah.
has a question. What Filipino mythical creature piqued your interest the most? Or which one inspired
Hmm.
you to start the book? Teka, we can answer that a bit later. Let's talk more about the Manananggal.
Okay.
Okay. So, so, teka, ba't labo itong ano ko what the hell? I was drawing a manananggal. Teka, okay, balik. Okay. So, ano ba yung tanong ko sa manananggal? Uh, uh, Shit, I lost it. I lost my
Yeah.
question. Okay, let's. So,
I can keep talking about different manananggal if you want.
yeah, sure,
There
sure.
are still a few.
Pero,
Okay, there's the Kapampangan version. It's called the Magkukutud. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
magkukutkud?
They're the same kind of manananggal, but they lay eggs.
Whoa!
And when they lay eggs, like if you crack it open, they find human body parts.
Holy shit!
So so basically like the magkukutud would look for dead people. Yeah. In this story they look for the dead. They eat eat the flesh, and that's where the uh, body parts in the eggs come from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Holy shit! Can you imagine if that's real, no? Where does it lay eggs? Does it build a nest or paano yun?
It doesn't really. Well, it just has secluded places. So, like, I guess it's like Easter when you try to find eggs,
In the
and you're
forest?
like, "Oh, this is cool," and it's like, "Nope, human thumbs.
Holy shit! How big
Need,
would the egg be?
need to run."
How big is the eggs?
Uh, in some stories, they're about the same size as chicken eggs.
Oh, so
So,
you can't fit, let's say, a liver in that. 'Di ba?
yeah,
Parang parts ng ano to? Para ano naman to,
yeah.
tapos shit, liver pala, 'di ba? What's the biggest part of the body? Well, fingers lang siguro, no? You can put a foot in there. Maybe a thumb, 'di ba?
Mm,
You can put an ankle.
probably. You don't know. Maybe there's big chicken eggs
Well, oo nga, no?
somewhere.
Oo nga. Well, there are also I wonder kung saan nanggaling 'yun. Maybe I don't know. Kasi there are different kinds of eggs. There are snake eggs, which could be
Mm.
bigger, a little bigger, diba? Or there would be parang yung mga eggs ng bayawak, diba? So, what else? What else, ano? Ano pang ibang klase ng manananggal? How many pala muna? Roughly, how many manananggals?
Well, in my research, it's around 15. I'm actually going through it to like move it around. Like, is this really a manananggal? Because there are like stories are like, oh, it's a manananggal that lives its life without flying and only half its body. And I'm like, is that really a manananggal if it's like that?
Oo nga, no? So, what are your classifications? What are your requirements to consider a
To be
creature na manananggal?
definitely the self-segmenting. Like if you don't uh, cut out part of your body, I don't think you can be defined as a
Mm-hmm.
manananggal.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, that's pretty much it. I
How about,
mean,
but levitation or flight should be a part of that as well, diba?
oh yeah, definitely.
Hmm.
Okay, yeah. So those are the two main things.
Kasi yung pinanggalan does not have wings, diba?
Yeah, yeah.
It just floats.
Yeah, it's the same as the magtatanggal and the wawog or
Whoa.
wuwog.
Mm,
It's the
okay.
same. Like the wuwog is a head with dangling intestines, just like penanggalan, manannanggal. Yeah,
And what ano kaya yung origins on the myth kung paano siya patayin, 'di ba? What are the yung siguro meron ding variations 'yon, 'di ba? On ways to kill
mm,
a manananggal. So, 'di
yeah,
ba, parang ang alam ko yung salt eh. Parang you put salt on the on the lower segment of the body. And
yeah.
then
It's uh, I guess there are just many ways to make sure that they don't uh return, because it's like the monster becoming human again. Like as long as you prove it to be a monster and it stays a monster, it cannot survive in the light of day. But
mhm.
that's just like a metaphorical way of looking at it. But yeah, but there are also some manananggals that are uh, craftier, I guess, or more clever. Like there are some stories where the manananggal can disguise its lower half and turn it into a banana stalk. There's
Wow.
a manananggal like creature in Aklan called the Tangge.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, my Aklan friends, I did not pronounce that right. That can turn their lower half into an anthill.
An ant hill.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So it's like there's a lot. I
So
mean, the other way of killing it without touching its lower half is stabbing it in the back with a bamboo uh, stake.
oh, grabe, no?
But yeah,
So,
yeah,
right now kasi parang you're mentioning these variations na parang I can't help but think yung mga reasons, yung mga scenarios on why some people would think na manananggal to, it's an ant pero it's an ant hill. Tapos parang
mm-hmm.
dahil ano kayang nangyari sa kanya to think na
Yeah,
kasi definitely there are people who believed in these things, 'di ba? Tapos parang they were really convinced that that ant
mm-hmm.
hill was actually the lower half of the manananggal. 'Di ba?
Yeah,
So parang naiisip ko, you know, pag when I hear um stories like this, yun yung mga naiisip ko, ano kaya what are the events that led for somebody to conclude that this is something, an evil creature na alam mo yun, na para, so
yeah.
probably
Well,
they just heard ganun.
there's kind of like there's social reasons why people
Mhm.
believe in these folk tales. Uh, One that I've noticed is to protect the members of society that are most in danger. So, like, if you're a pregnant woman or if you're a child, for example, you shouldn't be going out at night, period, or something might happen to you. And these stories of aswang help them to stay controlled and be in the house at specific times so that they would not go in danger.
Mhm.
Um, and the other kinds that I've noticed with aswang, like people would name actual families as aswang because either they don't want to associate with them or it's as an explanation for wealth and power.
Mhm.
I think I did an interview in Iloilo once, and they were like, "Oh, they're rich, so they must be aswang because that's how they got their riches." And there was one time I was doing field work for a class, and we were supposed to go barangay to barangay asking about what languages they spoke. And there was this one barangay that our guide would not let us go to at all because he said that barangay is full of aswang.
Wow.
Which like I wanted
Until
I
now.
wanted to go to yeah, I wanted to go to there more, but they wouldn't let me.
Talaga? And
Yeah.
why do you think so?
Because it's like it's a really deep held belief that uh people like a lot of people are like, why tempt fate? Like this could be right, this could be wrong, but a lot of the time when uh they tempt fate and say it's wrong and like go against the swang, things happen. Like I remember one of my batchmates did this paper
Mm-hmm.
on an aswang uh in I think it was Bicol. I'm not entirely sure. Pero she got, I think she got kulam. Like she got really sick. And like there was a phone call. It's like, oh, are you the one asking questions about this guy? And she's like, yeah. And it's like, stop or he will curse you. And there are a lot. And like, it's like the stories evolve parallel to the society. So like in Aswang stories, it's a relatively new part of the folklore that if you burn tires or rubber in front of your house, the aswang will not like the smell, so it'll
Mm-hmm.
go to another house. And there's also like in the 50s the Americans used stories of the aswang as psyops to make sure to uh, lure rebels out or to keep the to terrorize the people of the towns to make sure they stayed where they were.
Mm. Do you think this could be also smears to let's say um political opponents? Kasi sabi mo may mga mayayaman, 'di ba? Parang
Yeah,
to smear other people to just to ostracize them from society,
yeah,
'di ba?
definitely. I don't know if you remember, but when GMA was president,
Mhm.
there were a lot of effigies of her as an aswang that were
Whoa.
burned. Yeah.
Oh, nga, no?
Uh, I'm sure you can Google the pictures. They were very well made, actually.
Talaga?
Yeah.
GMA. Let's see. Let's look that up. PGMA effigies. How do you spelling effigies? Effigies.
Aswang, I think you can do GMA Aswang protests,
Eto. Oo nga, no?
right?
Oo nga, no? So parang, wow. I never, it never crossed my mind that, well, this could play into the psyche of Filipinos. Diba? That,
Yeah.
holy shit, this woman is an aswang. And everybody knows what an
Yeah.
aswang is. And even though they're not telling you exactly yung exact words na aswang siya, 'di ba? Pero the visuals parang you know that I don't know. You know na parang it's a it's really an evil being.
Hmm.
Grabe, oh, ano?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's
So a
okay.
lot of people think that this is like ancient folklore and these are stories from hundreds of years ago. But a lot of it is not. Like a lot of it is like, oh, this story is from the 60s lang, where suddenly there was a spotting of this creature, or this is like in the 90s. There were urban legends attached to different mythical creatures, like the sigbin. It's this kind of kangaroo goat hybrid thing from the Visayas. There are stories that if it bites your shadow, you will get sick and die. If you manage to tame it, you can ride it and it will uh, make you appear in another place in an instant. But in the 90s, there was an urban legend that the blood of the Sigbin could cure AIDS.
What?
So there were like a lot of people that thought that way and tried to look for the sigben.
How did that occur to them? That idea, di ba? Di ba? Paano yun?
Well, it's I don't like if you compare it to uh folklore of different parts of the world. I honestly don't know where it starts, but it's like China. They think pangolin scales can cure different ailments. They
Holy
think
shit.
like grinding up bones, right, from different animals is a herbal remedy,
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing. So it's kind of that same uh, line of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Maybe they got it from like an albulario said so,
Mm-hmm.
so they just ran with it. That sort of thing.
I see. Well, going back to what you said about portraying politicians as aswang. Ito yung picture ni Gloria. Ang ano,
Yeah,
yung effigy is yung tongue niya is sobrang haba. That's aswang visuals, di ba?
yeah, definitely.
Ang
Like
galing.
I did not stop laughing when I saw that because
Talaga.
I was like, okay,
Wow.
modern na saw it. Like, uh,
Ang galing. Oo
yeah,
nga, ang galing. Ang galing ng idea na yun. And it's very Filipino. 'Di ba?
definitely, yeah,
Sometimes you see naman na parang demonyo, pero it's still Christianity. Christianity naman yung ano, everybody knows what yung visuals ng demonyo na Satan, 'di ba? Pero this
yeah,
one,
yeah,
I think the aswang visual is runs deeper among Filipinos.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's
Like you
great about it.
can,
Mm.
yeah. I mean, almost everywhere in the Philippines, you can find aswang legends, either uh, direct, because there are different types of aswang categories
Mhm.
um, that I kind of cribbed off of Maximorama. So there are aswang that are manannaggal like, there are aswang that only eat dead bodies, there are aswang that are that only drink blood, there are aswang that are only mangkukulam like, so they're only witches, then there are aswang that are only shapeshifters.
Mhm.
um, like there's an aswang type from Marinduque that turns into a black pig and only eats pigs, called the mamba baboy.
Oh, mambababoy.
So
Okay.
it's like you can go to a place and have the thinking of, okay, uh, I know about aswang, but
Mhm.
then you're like, oh, I don't know about this kind of local aswang.
Okay.
So yeah,
Ka-
it's a bit of you have to, like in my research I've learned to not have expectations
Mhm.
and to never have assumptions
Okay.
at all, because like if you assume like, oh, when they say wakwak or when they say balbal,
Mhm.
it's this specific kind of creature, but when you go there, uh, it's like, because the balbal that I first knew about is this kind of aswang that only eats corpses.
Mhm.
But then there's another kind of balbal that's like manananggal, but has the form of a flying squirrel, like a big flying squirrel.
Mhm. Wow, flying.
So
Sa bagay,
so it's like,
well, it's easy to parang visualize flying squirrels as aswang kasi mukha
yeah,
naman talaga silang ano, nakakatakot din naman talaga yung itsura
yeah,
nila, 'di ba? Oh, well,
yeah.
speaking of aswang, let's just give a shout out to Jordan Clark of Aswang Project. Parang
Jordan.
yeah, he's created these extensive videos about Philippine
Mm.
mythology, especially about the aswang, 'di ba? Yung that hanapin natin. Yan. I'm sure if you search aswang on YouTube, yun yung unang lalabas. Ay, hindi. pero
Mm.
pero
Yeah,
a few years ago it was, 'di ba? Aswang Project.
yeah, yeah.
So, if you in that documentary, ano parang he presented a lot of ideas regarding the
Mhm.
aswang the
Yeah.
origins and the types of aswang na mga that all over the country, 'di ba? And
Mhm.
and explanations then on why people would assume somebody is an aswang, 'di
Yeah.
ba? So
Definitely watch it, guys.
yeah, the must watch to and ang lupit. Eto Philippine mythology, not that one. Aswang phenomenon, this one. Okay, so great work from Jordan Clark of Aswang Project. Hopefully, I get to have him on the podcast too. Some anyway, so pero what else? Uh, kasi for me, aswangs are the most popular of the Pinoy ano bang tawag sa kanila? Pinoy aswang. 'Di
Mythical
ba? 'Di
creatures.
ba? Kumbaga, yun na nga yung
Yeah.
ano eh. Kasi kung sasabihin ko, yung bangungot is also an aswang. 'Di ba? Parang ganun. Well, how would you, is there a line between these creatures na parang, is a tiyanak aswang? Kasi they're practically the same, they have the same parang thing na parang they eat ganyan, terrorize the villagers, ganyan.
I do it by like uh derivation of name. Because it's like the aswang has these specific things, has these specific qualities, but a chanak or impacto has different qualities. Like I've never heard of anyone call a chanak an aswang. I've heard people say that a chanak is a halimaw,
Oh, talaga?
because like
Okay.
Halimao seems to cover all like the basis of monster. But if you say Aswang, like I mean in movies, it's almost always like the beautiful woman that turns into a monster. So I mean the semantics of it aren't completely clear, but in like pop culture, there's a like if you see a beautiful woman with wings and sharp teeth, you're like, oh, aswang. But if you see like a monster baby, you think Chana. You don't think aswang.
Oh, yeah, sa bagay, no? Oo nga, no? Pag
Yeah.
nakita mong bata, di ba? Oh,
Yeah.
can, can you
I hate Chanaks the most.
does these the things really creep you out for real when you ganun
Uh,
ba?
well, for Chanaks, I just hate babies. As a person, I can't be near them. So I'm just like, but the other ones, um, they're very interesting to me uh, on an academic level. I have well no I have had what people would say were paranormal experiences. Uh, they're like I went to this neighborhood once, and my friend said, "Oh, the person living in that apartment is a manananggal, so you should avoid it." And then I was like, okay, I wasn't planning on going there anyway. And then like that night, I like a really big thing flew over me, and like it was way bigger than a normal bat. So I'm like, wait, is this it? Or like going, because I still I call the book the spirits of the Philippine Archipelago because it doesn't delineate between like gods and goddesses and uh, monsters and even urban legends. So I have this
Okay.
friend who went to Saint Scholastica College, the high school in near Taft, and
Mhm.
apparently they have like a shit ton of paranormal experiences. There were like ghosts in every classroom. There were tests that had to stop because a ghost was in the classroom, so they had to evacuate it and
I
things
see.
like that.
Oh.
So like I try to I mean I like to think that I'm objective and these things don't really affect me. But I have a pouch of holy salt and the cross of Saint Benedict. He's the patron saint of exorcisms. Just in case.
Talaga? Wow. Okay. Okay. Pero speaking of ghosts, parang is there a line between the mythical creatures and ghosts? Are they still the same?
Uh, it actually depends on the period of time. Because uh, for gods, for example, a lot of gods are actually, well, not a lot, but there are some gods that were real people that their ethno-linguistic group or tribe started to worship. So what in Luzon, one of the honorifics is like Lakan. So I think it would be maybe like past 10 generations and then he was venerated as a god.
Mm.
So for ghosts, I guess if the story of the ghost eventually became more and more distant from its original surroundings, then you could say that it has become its own unique mythical creature, like Bloody Mary, for example. Like her story was like centuries and centuries ago, but people still believe
Oo nga, no?
in her. So so it's like, yeah, but then but then it separates. Like if the White Lady of Balete Drive, if her legend continues for years and centuries and decades to come, then like people might give her a name, or she
Oh,
might be the Lady of Balete, and people would start like
yeah.
avoiding it. Yeah.
Well,
Ganun.
yung White Lady is kind of a little weird for me kasi
Mm.
it's not you first of all, the name White Lady is not Pinoy, 'di ba? 'Di ba? It's
Yeah.
obviously it's
Uh,
English,
the
'di ba? So
the Spanish called it caporesa, if
oh.
I remember
So
right.
it
Um.
existed even before the Americans came.
Yes. Because like the visual of the woman with the white dress uh is influenced by the Spanish, definitely, because they like white to them symbolizes purity, and
Mhm.
some legends of white ladies have the white dress, but it's speckled with there's red uh, blood, or it's torn and things like that, so you know what kind of spirit there is. But I've also noticed that in some of my research, the white lady myth meshes with local spirits. Like in Tuguegarao, white ladies are guardians of bridges. So
Oh, okay.
if you were going to cross a bridge, you have to honk to let the white lady know you're approaching, so she will let you pass.
Are
And
white
if you don't do
okay.
that, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Well, are white ladies ghost of dead people, or is it a spirit like let's say encantada ganyan?
Again, it depends on where you are. Like
Okay,
in
I
the
see.
Tugigarao example, there was like they my informant didn't really say that she was human, but that she was a spirit. And there was no like going back to a story that, oh, someone died on this bridge or something.
I see.
But yeah, in like modern white lady stories, their name uh sometimes but yeah,
Some
like there's the uh, sorry,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, sorry.
because there's
Sometimes.
like again like the white lady of Balete Drive. There's
Mm-hmm.
the White Lady of Loacan Road, that's in Baguio. The White Lady of La Union, who haunts a specific watchtower there. There's like the White Lady of the Baguio again. Teacher's Camp. It's another
Okay.
urban legend. There's yeah,
Wow. Huh. Let's look at the comments. We have a few questions here. Teka, I hope they're still watching. So again, guys, please share this podcast. And if you have questions, we're gonna read some of them here in the podcast and ask Carl about it. Okay, so one question is from one comment is from Robert John Astera. The concept of salt as a deterrent to monsters, bad luck, evil spirits are also present in Europe. Oo nga no, kasi and
yeah,
Japan and Asian and other Asian countries. Parang
yeah,
was salt that kasi from what I know in history, salt had been very kumbaga, it's almost as parang same value siya in weight as gold back then. And
yeah.
it's 'di ba? And
Uh,
so it's quite scarce. Hindi siya ganun ka like we view it today, 'di ba? And
mm.
yung salt ba nung ancient times kaya ng Pilipino, parang ganun din kaya?
Well, in most societies, salt represents purity. Like even in Europe, the the expression "take it with a grain of salt"
Mm-hmm.
actually goes back to the belief that salt could cure poison.
Oh.
Um, yeah, so like for the Philippines, I'm just thinking that salt was a way of representing purity
Mm-hmm.
and cleanliness. Because uh, even when you cook things like to tenderize it or to make it palatable, you
Mm-hmm.
have to rub salt on it
Yeah.
to remove the impurities.
But was it as valuable back in, let's say, Europe? Kasi tayo, we're surrounded by the sea and you could just take salt from the sea. However they
It was
do it,
definitely more valuable in Europe.
di ba? Parang,
I I don't like I'm not sure about the studies of that, but like in Europe, the word salary is actually derived from salt because Roman soldiers would get paid in salt,
yeah, di ba? Kaya nga
like
salary, di ba?
salarium,
Oo.
salary. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's Mike Ramirez has a question. Um okay, he just said salt was a preservative in the days before refrigeration.
Yeah.
You'd salt something para di mabulok. It's a hydrant, so it sips moisture from food, and I'm guessing moisture leads to bacterial growth and spoils the food.
Mm.
Okay. And
Yep.
okay, may tanong siya kanina dito. And okay, so okay, he says Mike Ramirez says, "Hi guys, this is a great podcast. Thank you. Now, don't know if it's been asked, but did aswang start out as having a more benevolent or at least more neutral reputation before colonial times? And it's only the colonizers who literally demonized them. If even if we even believed in aswangs the same way before Spanish or American rule." Diba? Parang dun sa Aswang Project tackled this as well in the documentary. But what's your take on this?
Well, there were beings in that were recorded, uh, like the Bicolano evil god, whose name was Aswang
Yeah.
or Aswang. So uh, there are just like a lot of stories that were recorded about witches. Well, most of the time it's translated as witches that would uh, do these rituals or be cannibals and murderers. Like uh, again, like when I said before about looking around Southeast Asia to see similarities with the uh, monsters and mythical creatures. Like I believe like before the Spanish came, there was a belief in aswang. Well, uh not even like the technical name of aswang, like other recorded names like alok, balbal, kakag, oko, onglo, wakwak, tiktik,
Mm-hmm.
those things. Like I'm sure like they existed before the Spanish came. It's just I feel that the Spanish ramped it up like 1,000%. Be like uh they would demonize babaylans by telling that they were an aswang,
Mm-hmm.
because like an aswang is mostly female, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's that uh there's that line of thinking, and I'm definitely sure that the Spanish used the aswang uh to help demonize things, but the existence of harmful aswang-like creatures and or people were already there in pre-Hispanic times.
Okay. Do you think there was a it was really part of the strategy ng mga I think it is no ng mga colonizers to actively learn about mythologies of these of yung mga locals ng mga bansa and then twist it in a way na ganun para to
Well,
use it to their advantage, 'di ba?
yeah, I mean, uh, I I think you're giving it too much credit by calling it a strategy, because I think it's just basically go to a place. Oh, you're not converting. Uh, forced baptism. Go,
Mm.
and that's pretty much what I've seen.
Oh, okay. Well, that always baffles me kasi I had Xiao Chua on the podcast before. I asked him about something that I read. Parang at the height of Spanish rule in the Philippines, it is said that that at most at any given time sa history ng 300 years na yon or so, mga 500 Spanish people lang talaga ang nandoon, mga insula, ano ba tawag doon?
Yeah,
Basta
insulares or
insulares.
peninsula.
Oh,
Okay,
'di ba?
sorry.
So, parang ang 500 lang. But then we were conquered. And when I asked Xiao Chua about that, parang his answer was it was really just the religion. Parang they used the
Mm.
religion. And even even after hearing that answer, parang it was still baffling to me that how kasi ang dating sa akin parang nauto ka eh, 'di ba? 'Di ba parang
Yeah.
'di ba parang ano ka parang really parang wala man lang kumontra. So hindi naman totoo 'yan, parang gano'n. And given the attitude of Filipinos na parang hindi naman tayo basta madaling mauto ng mga, 'di ba? Parang paano nangyari 'yun? Hindi ko I can't wrap my head around that idea na nangyari 'yun. But then it did,
It's
'di ba?
well, uh, my line of thinking with that is like if you look at the Catholic religion, there is a reward at the end of it.
Mhm.
If you live your life as a good Catholic, you will go to paradise. In some of the uh, pre-Spanish religions, the afterlife was the same as the human life. Like your soul would go to the, well, depends on which ethno-linguistic group, but your soul will go to the sky world, or your
Mhm.
soul will go to the lower world. But uh like there would be a village, there would be your family, there would be crops to plant and tend.
Mhm.
um, there were some afterlives where uh, like nothing really happened, or you'd be part of the part of nature again. Like you'd become an Anita yourself and protect like a forest or a river. And I guess if you can give people the idea of eternal happiness and blessings, like they might not have a lot to lose. And there's also an equality, like uh, from a low, like if you're in a low strata of society, or if you're in what you would call the middle class or the upper class,
Mm-hmm.
everyone's the same. Like if you do good deeds, you will go to heaven. And again, that would appeal to a lot of people, I think.
Yeah. Well, probably, no? But then again, we already had our versions of heaven and hell, 'di ba? Kasi I think it's called kalawalhatian ng heaven, or at least on
uh
some.
because they don't that's only translated to heaven sometimes. Other times it's translated as sky world. And
Mm,
the sky world is a place where uh, again, depends on which ethno-linguistic group you talk to.
mm-hmm.
uh, for the Maranaos, one layer of sky world or heaven is guarded by the thousand-eyed, eight-headed giant called Walo. He guards souls eternally, and the souls are stuck in jars in the sky world. And there's no like what you do in heaven. Like there's no enjoying heaven. Your soul is in a jar.
Is
Uh,
is that a human? Is that in human form, or some kind of monster? Yung creature.
Walo?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's an eight-headed, thousand-eyed hairy giant.
Holy shit! So where
Yeah,
are the eyes all located in the heads or all over the body?
they actually don't like part of the uh, problem I've been having with a lot of the artists I commission is that there's no specifics on how these things look like. So you have to do like your best guess.
Mm-hmm.
One of my artists who did the illustration for Walo just put it all over his body.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay,
Kasi parang hindi
that
kasya nga
works.
naman sa ano eh. That's gotta be a huge head. Kung sa ano
Yeah.
lang, di ba? Okay. Whew. Grabe, no? Uh, and he guards basically like he guards the sky world.
Yeah, he
One
guards the
one face.
no, he guards one specific part of the sky world where the souls are stored.
Okay. So how many faces? I think nakalagay dun yun sa ano eh sa graphic novel ni na Ian Santamaria tsaka ni Mervin Malonzo, di ba? Yung may faces ng Sky World. Tapos may
Yeah.
pinakataas. I think it's 7 faces ata or whatever they call it.
Uh
Uh,
yeah, there are again there are different ones.
mm-hmm,
Some say that there are seven layers of the sky world and seven layers of the lower world.
mm-hmm.
Some say like the world is on the back of a giant female crocodile called
Ooh.
Dapu. Some say that the world is on the back of a lobster like creature called the lumbong.
Mm-hmm.
So that creature has the seven-layer world on its back. Then, yeah, I think the Ifugao ones have like four cardinal directions. Some Pampangan legends have uh, the world uh, and like it's a dome on top of the sky. Uh, yeah, so like I keep having to remind people that there is no one Philippine or Filipino mythology.
Yeah.
There are many mythologies in the Philippines.
That makes your job extra parang tough, 'di ba? Parang hirap na. Kasi ang dami eh. How do you creatively, how do you parang organize that no sa dami ng mga variations of different mythologies, mga ganun.
Because, okay, I like to keep my research life and my creative life separate. So when I
Mhm.
research, it's really like, uh, what did they say in the source, word for word, plus the context in which the source was. Like, okay, this guy, he was an American anthropologist. He's saying that these were gods. But what does he mean by gods? Is that God in the Western sense? So that's always in the back of my thinking. Or like uh, the translations of Spanish texts. So, are you familiar with the Ibalon, the Bicol epic?
I've heard of it. Hindi ko alam kung tama
Okay,
yung pagkaalala ko. Sige.
my favorite mythical creature is from there. It's a flying shark. Uh,
Woo!
in the
Sharknado.
translation,
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
exactly. In the translation, in the English one that I found in Damiano Eugenio's epic series, the translation for that is tiburon or tiburones.
Tiburones.
Tiburon
Okay.
just is literally shark in Spanish.
Okay.
So it's not even like a local term. And when I did a story about it, I had like a reader who knew Spanish was like, "Do you want to use this name?" So I one of my professors told me, "Oh, we call that pating na pakpakan." So I'm like,
Pating na.
"Okay, I'd rather use that than the Spanish word for that." So like when it comes to research, you just have to think, when was this written? Who was this written by? Uh, and where did you find it? Like it's trust. It's one of those trust but verify situations, especially when talking with like oral folklore. So like when you do written stuff,
Mhm.
it's daunting because like there's this guy Barton. He did books on Ifugao mythology in the 50s. He cataloged around 1,000 Ifugao gods.
Wow. Ifugao
And
pa
it's
lang
just like,
'yun. Ifugao
yeah, and
pa
that's
lang.
just Ifugao.
Holy shit.
So, like, you have to go through that, but then if you visit Ifugao now, 50 years later, some of them will be like, "Oh, I've heard of these," and some will be like, "Oh, I've never heard of these," and you're like, "Why have you never heard of them?" And then sometimes it's like, "Oh, because these people in this specific area are the only ones that worship this god, because it's like the god of this forest or the god of this area or the god of this town." So it's a lot to deal with.
Okay.
But my favorite parts of research is going to people and interviewing them, like talking to old people about sometimes their experiences.
Sorry. Can you repeat that?
Okay,
Experiences?
yeah. My favorite is when I talk to them about their experiences. So
Mhm.
there was one friend I had whose family came from Catanduanes
Mhm.
and told me about this story of the Kabalan. They who are hairy centaurs that live in trees. And I'm like,
Centaurs.
yeah, centaurs that are hairy. And I'm like, really? And apparently, her family, like her lolo and her tito, had an experience with the kabalan. Like they got cursed because they kaingin the kabalan's tree. And I'm like, whoa, metal. So like I got the
Oh.
story, and like apparently other people also talked about the kabalan. So I'm like, okay, I got this. But then there are like some stories that you can't really. It's a question mark. like true Philippine ghost stories. Like that was one of the things I read growing up.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Yeah, I remember that.
one of their ways of verifying the stories was to hire a psychic
Mm-hmm.
to see if this supernatural thing actually happened. And I'm like, huh, do I consider that or do I not? But it's why I have a whole section on urban legends because they're also
Mm.
very interesting. Like when the Americans were still here, there was a UFO like in view from Manila, and it's still like unknown what it was. And I'm like, oh, that'll make a cool story. But yeah.
Teka, would a psychic have access to, let's say, um yung pating na pakpakin, 'di ba? Paano ano niya ba 'yon? Would he
Oh
be
no no
able to
no.
connect?
Like that was just for the True Philippine Ghost Stories because that's really what they did.
Okay, I
Like
see.
someone was on payroll for that. But
Oh.
there are people that practice folk magic and actively try to worship the old gods. Like I
What?
don't know if you gone to Instagram. There
Mhm.
was a hashtag bunny
Oh, sorry. There's hashtag what? Let's
mas kulam
let's check that out.
Instagram. Check
Instagram.
Instagram.
Okay,
Yes.
let's go to Instagram. Oh, hashtag has kulam?
Mas MASS Mas
Oh,
MASS Kulam KULAM.
hashtag mas kulam. Walang underscore, no?
No.
Okay, mas kulam. Wow, 2020. Well,
Yes.
15 posts lang, pero let's see. Okay. Hmm. Well, these looks like ano parang tawag doon, yung we can shit.
Yeah. So
Oo.
that's folk magic practiced by modern Filipinos.
Mm-hmm.
So that like they digitally hold rituals, right, and things like that. So yeah,
Okay.
but yeah, because oh wait, I forgot to say pala. They should have been sent from the start.
What?
Uh, there are differences between myths and legends. When you
What?
say myths, you are talking about uh, a time when there weren't any humans in the world, like the ordering of the cosmos, the first
Whoa.
creator god, who who are the gods that made the world and the universe. When you
Okay.
talk about legends, these are more recent, like the legend of Bernardo Carpio, which was probably around the 19th century. Like you can trace it back to a specific time and place that's nearer human history. Like there were already established rules of the universe, but then there were these culture heroes that did what they did, and you're like, yes, people.
Okay, I see.
But yeah,
What?
but
Okay.
uh, sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
I was just about to ask, what is the oldest Filipino legend that you're aware of? Which is ba?
Because okay, a lot of oh wait, legend or myth? Sorry.
Legend. Kasi yun yung parang I would say
Mm.
Islam ang legend.
Uh
Epiko ata yun, eh, di ba? Pero I'm thinking it's the same as a legend.
yeah, yeah. Wait. Mm. Trying to think. Because like you can say that the culture heroes, like you said, that the ones that are in epics can technically be said to be legends depending on the time they were recorded.
Okay.
Yeah, because like legends are plausible.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't really know where the story came from, but you know the past events happened. So it'll be more
Okay.
like again
Let's say,
Bernardo Carpio.
okay.
Sorry,
Let's
or
say,
like even the sorry,
sorry, sorry.
go ahead.
I was parang, correct me if I'm wrong. Let's say, a Mayon volcano eruption. And then, of course, it's
Yeah,
gonna be a tremendous event, and it will be memorable for
yeah,
a few decades at least. And so there could be, I'm guessing people would search for answers on what happened, why, kung bakit ganito, diba? And then
hmm,
I'm assuming that would be the birth of these legends, a particular legend, and you can trace
yes,
it during that time kasi you can actually may nagre-record na sila ng mga ano nun eh, ng mga ng
yeah,
history, 'di
yeah,
ba? So maybe that's my guess.
yeah, yeah. Because like the difference between the legend and an epic is the way they're written. Because like an epic is in the form of a poem or like in a specific kind of dialect within the language that's more honorific, and the heroic and the epic is usually centered around the hero like lamang or uh, pan or labaw dongon,
Mhm.
and that hero is either a god or a demigod. So like you can think of uh, Hercules
Mhm.
as a legend, as a legendary figure, and if there were like a long form poem written about him, then that would be the Epic of Hercules. That
Okay.
that sort of thing. Like
Oh, okay.
it's a bunch of jumbled. Yeah.
Okay. So an epic is a literary work. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, pero
Yes.
is it a literary work of a legend? Discussing a legend or ganun?
It's the literary work describing a specific uh, hero. So it could
Oh.
be a legendary hero. Yeah, so an epic could be written about a legendary hero. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. At least may konting ganun yung pala yun. Kasi you always just use the word eh, di ba? Epic.
Yeah.
Epico.
Cause like
Kwentong bayan. Di
yeah.
ba those are the things
Yeah,
that
yeah.
the terms that you've learned back in elementary eh. Kwentong bayan,
Mhm.
epico, alamat, and if you did not pay attention like I did back
Yeah.
then, hindi ko parang para sa akin ba lahat legend na yun, walang pinagkaiba. So yun pala yun, yung pinag
Yeah.
difference. Okay,
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
And like when you say mythical creature, it applies to everything except uh gods because there's usually like a split between deities and other spirits.
Who's the most powerful god in yun ang pinaka na parang consensus ng mga taong nag studying this.
From where? Like you have the Bathala of the Tagalogs, you
Mhm.
have a paper written in the 1600s of Tagalog Laguna, whose supreme god was Anatala. You have the um, Mayaw, whose creator god is Wigan ad Angachal. You
Oh.
have the Kapampangans, whose and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, whose
Mhm.
main god is Mangetcha. Mangetcha.
Okay.
Like the Ilocanos have Angangalo, the giant that created everything. For the Bicolanos, it's Gugurang, the creator deity, the supreme god, also representing fire. The Bicol Agtas also worship Gugurang. Uh, what else? For the Sambals or the ones in Zambales, it's Apo Mamalyari. If it's uh, for the Ifugao or the ones in the Cordilleras, it's Kabigat or Lumawig. Yeah, I'm just
Oh.
going down through my list.
No. Oh,
Um,
ang
where
dami.
are
So parang and these parang gods na to did not come at the same time ba? Kasi parang I suppose the question is um did the Filipinos have obviously it's not a monotheistic you can call
yeah,
it religion, 'di ba? Pero
yeah.
are they and they have different names, but are those just different names describing one deity, or are they really
Uh,
separate entities?
some are separate because like there was an influx of Hindu Buddhist cultures to the Philippines. Uh, okay, like centuries back. So they have like gods that may be related to Shiva or Brahma or uh, or Agni in the Hindu pantheon. And when they came here, that was and worshipped locally. That's what they became. You can see this in the beliefs in Nagas, snake-like guardian spirits, which can be found from Mindanao to Luzon. Uh, a lot of the other ones might be uh, deified culture heroes or creator gods.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could like there's this guy who was the chief of this group, and then through centuries after, like his name became synonymous with hunting or farming or uh, things like that. Uh, yeah, so what I've seen, like there's regional gods like Kabunian. You can find it. You can find the name all through the Cordilleras.
Okay.
Um,
Cordillera pala yung
and
Kabunian.
like
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and like for the Visayas region, you have like Kaptan and Magwayan,
Mm.
uh, which is very different because you because by the name lang uh they're not the same, like they're different individual uh entities.
At saka
And
man and
then
woman couple yun, di ba? Si Captain tsaka si Maguayan.
eh, depends on, well, yeah, Kaptan is almost always male, but there are some myths that I've seen. I don't know if it was misattributed, but I've seen like a male Magwayan
Oh,
that was
wow.
brother
Okay.
of Kaptan.
I see. I see.
Again, like again, these stories morph through decades and centuries. There are some similarities. There are even similarities when you look in the folklore of Borneans and Indonesians and Malaysian. And uh, my research is not really specifically that. Like I don't go through cognates and see where the gods are. I just like kind of tabulate them and see which makes for a good story.
Okay. Oh, what is I'm just curious. Would let's say would let's say 'di ba Kabunian is from saan ulit? Cordilleras, 'di ba? So, yeah,
Cordilleras, yeah.
so would the people in Visayas have heard of Kabunian or no?
I haven't seen any source that say that they have. Their
I see. Okay.
creation myth is Kaptan or malaon.
Did they fight over
But
this? Let's say parang the different tribes would parang parang 'di ba parang my God is better than your God, parang mga ganong klaseng wars. Would there be
not that I'm aware of,
I see.
because in pre-Hispanic and pre-colonial times, it was mostly a struggle for trade, like uh, who can I ally with so that I can gain more power. Because there wasn't one Filipino nation. There were like different kingdoms and
Yeah.
rajanates and things like that. So I've never I am not aware of anything that religion actively pushed them to do war. But I may find something on it in the future, because that might be possible. But yeah.
I see. Oh, okay. So the most of the writings that does not parang hindi religious yung causes ng war for now at least. Okay. So
As far as I know, like,
mhm.
yeah.
Okay, I see. Jordan has a question. Are those gods the most powerful because of creation or because they survived colonialism like Manama? I don't know
Uh,
who Manama is, but by the way, but yeah.
Manama is a creator being. He's uh, wait, no, uh, no, that's Melu. Yeah, Manama is a creator being Bagobo, Hata. Let's
Okay.
double check.
So Manama survived colonialism. What do you mean by survived
Yes,
colonialism?
they are still worshipped actively.
Oh, okay. Bukid nun daw, sabi ni
By
Jordan.
Yeah, by like the Lumads
Oh.
in Mindanao, there are active movements to resurrect the beliefs in the old gods. Uh, Manobo. Yeah. Manama lives in the highest realm of the sky. He was the one that created the world out of the dirt of his fingernails.
Wow! Libag
Yeah.
lang ng ng kuko ni Manama pala. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
wait.
Yeah.
Let me just comment on that. So, is that an indication of how of somewhat an irrelevance of people and the world, uh, how they view themselves, that they're just parang basically dirt from a fingernail?
Well, it's dirt from a celestial fingernail. It's one of those things where uh, you descended from something divine. Like, even if it was the dirt out of his fingernails, you still the earth was still made from or made by a powerful god.
Yeah, but it's kind of deprecating, 'di ba? Parang you're kasi
Well,
you're not even part of the god,
ma-
'di ba? At least
no,
okay.
man was made from clay, but the
Okay.
earth was made from the dirt of his fingernails.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah, so
So they imagine him as a really huge creature or deity siguro.
it actually depends, because there are some stories where the origin of man is that they were people of the sky world,
Mhm.
but then they went to the earth world and someone like cut their rope or stole their ladder or something like
Okay.
that, and they became humans. There are a lot of motifs in creation myths, like but to answer Jordan's question,
Mhm.
uh it's I think like it's also a little bit of my uh bias when I think of gods in terms of Western. Uh myths because usually the creator god is also the same as the supreme god, and the supreme god is the most powerful in the pantheon. But there are also times when the creator god is different from the supreme god. So yeah, like in the Ilocano legend with Angangalo, he was a giant that created the world. Like his footsteps became the valleys, and he spat out and they became rivers. But he did so under the orders of an unnamed greater god.
Wow.
So yeah, I actually don't really know how to answer that question because uh, I feel that if a god is worshipped, then that's where their power comes from. So if no one knows who the god is, but they're said that they're the most powerful, but like no one can even name them, then huh, actually yeah, it's a very interesting philosophical
Yeah.
question.
Okay, because basically the nobody, as far as I know, maybe uh okay, so ito muna. So basically Manama is still there, meron pa rin siyang followers, meron pa rin people who are worshiping him.
Uh,
It's not a dead
I'm not
religion, parang
sure if
ganun.
it's the because I haven't done actual religious studies
I see.
in
Okay.
Mindanao, so I'm not sure if they well one if they still call him Manama
Mm.
or if he is or if he like merged with another god and is called under the same name.
Okay.
But uh,
Pwede nga, no? Well, that's possible.
yeah,
Pero right now, let's say Bathala is Tagalog, right? Tama ba?
uh, yes, that pronunciation. He's Tagalog. There's
Okay.
another Kapampangan god named Batala. But yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
Well, my point is parang I don't know anyone who's worshiping Bathala anymore. So
Uh,
uh,
there
or
are okay. There are actually philams that are trying to uh, reignite the worship of
mhm.
old gods. I actually I'm not a practitioner of
Mhm.
that. I'm just aware of it happening. But okay, now I remember. There's this goddess
Mhm.
whose name is Frayag Sarif. The name might be influenced by Islam and just by the form, but
Yeah.
she is from the Maguindanao area, and she was actually called on in January by Maguindanaoans still worshipping the old gods to bring rain to Australia because of the bushfires.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Wow. So parang so who are these people reviving that?
Okay, there are like two groups. Like one of them there has continuously worshipped them like for centuries, like going back uh, hundreds of thousands, hundreds of years. Then the other uh, are using it as a spiritual connection
Mhm.
to uh, rekindle their association with the spirits of the earth or uh, nature. Like it's I don't again I don't know too much about the modern movement except that it exists. But yeah,
Okay.
they're trying to bring it back.
I see. Jordan says when Xavier University and CDO has a public gathering, they present a video in appreciation of God, Allah, and Manama to include all current beliefs in the region. It's really beautiful.
Oh,
Hmm. Okay.
cool.
Hmm.
I didn't know that.
Well, okay lang naman. Tama naman talaga, 'di ba? Kasi where is the most where is the most which part of the Philippines has the most myths na pinaka doon nag-concentrate? Is it Mindanao or where?
Okay, are you going like by island or by ethno-linguistic group?
Maybe island na lang.
Because
Island. Ikaw?
I would say, okay, I didn't count, but uh, Mindanao has a lot of recorded
Mm-hmm.
ones, so you can see a lot of epics
Mm-hmm.
from Mindanao.
Talaga? So may,
Uh,
may actual
just like I'm,
written work na mga that you can still read right now?
yeah, there's a lot.
Wow.
Wait,
Okay. Great.
try this. Dami ang
Ooh.
Eugenio's. Eugenio's folk literature series, The Epics. You will
Wow.
not regret it.
Talaga?
Yeah. Yeah. Lot. It has like around nearly 20 epics.
Okay.
Uh, from
Are
yeah,
those
from all over
original
the country.
original writings from when? What year?
Uh, it depends. Like some of the epics were written down in like the 1800s, so there's like a lot of Spanish and Christian influence there already. Uh, Lamang was very recently taken down, so you have like Doña, whatever. But the older ones were from fieldwork, done relatively recently. I'm not sure of the years. There's also stuff done by Alicia Magos that was in ancient Kinaraya in the Central Panay Mountains, and they said
Mm-hmm.
that that's story's been passed down for hundreds of years. So again, you have to look at who did the recording, who did the translation, and where was it published.
Wow. Huh. How ha, gaano kasakit para sa that an overwhelming yung amount kumbaga hindi mo maisip kung gaano kadaming account were destroyed back in the yung pre-colonial history ng
Mm.
Pilipinas. Alam mo yun, how frustrating is it?
Yeah.
Kasi I'd imagine you as a researcher compared to regular Filipinos, you would feel more parang attached to that.
Well, because my line of thinking is it is what it is, and a lot of the legends that I've uh, recorded and read are actually pretty recent, only in the past few hundred years. And a lot of those have already been influenced by Christianity and some Islam. And I don't think that they're any less valid as legends
Mm-hmm.
just because they were influenced. There's more modern influence. I mean, honestly, I would love it if there were like uh, like Rosetta Stones
Mm-hmm.
of myths, or if there was an actual writer who took the time to write everything, like maybe a Chinese traveler or someone that would be like Marco Polo that went around the Philippines. That would have been great, but there's not. So you have to work with what you got.
Oo nga, no?
Yeah.
Ano, kasi, um, 'di ba, we're islands and our neighboring countries, neighboring kingdoms back then, basically we're just trading with each other and then the ideas come and go,
Yeah.
'di ba? And not just we're trading not just goods but also ideologies, ideas,
Mhm.
and religion, mga ganyan. So, at one point, at what point did it, kumbaga parang, did it come na the ideas that were collected became Filipino? Na it's not Indian anymore. It's not, let's say, kung saan man, Chinese, mga ganyan.
I mean, like, if you want to be technical about it, the Philippines only came about uh, the with Spanish demarcation like 330 something years ago, right? But
Yeah.
the modern Philippines and its borders were carved out by force because of the Americans. So you're
Mm-hmm.
like, where is the sliding time scale? Like it confuses me when people say like uh, pre-colonial Philippines
Mm-hmm.
because there wasn't a Philippines before colonialism. There was like uh, the Kingdom of Tondo, the Rajanates of Sulu, and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And they were like,
Yeah.
they're not. You can't call them Filipino. So uh, I don't know. That's again. That's why I say I write about the spirits in the Philippines uh, and in the Philippine archipelago and not Filipino spirits because
Okay.
there's also a lot of identity politics in play. Like uh, people get to pick and choose what they want without uh, crediting like the locals for where they got it from. Uh, like an example I uh, used before is sisig. Sisig came from Pampanga, right?
Okay.
But then if you're from Manila and you got that recipe and then you change it into something that isn't sisig like anymore and you call it sisig, then it's
Nagagamit.
cultural appropriation. Yeah, it's
Okay.
cultural appropriation. So it's like uh I this story from Mindanao about uh this epic character or like this guy from Visayas, Labadongon. He's
Mm-hmm.
Filipino, but he was only Filipino in the past 100 years. In the past 600 years, he was Visayan.
Okay.
So, so like, what are you uh, going like? I don't know. Like, it's a weird, murky situation for me,
Okay.
and I just take parts of what I find interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I always credit where the inspiration came from so that people know where to look, and then I try to make something new out of it. But I don't ever say that any of my stories are true
I
because
see.
there has been a lot of misinformation
Mm-hmm.
uh, in in just the past 10 years about uh, Philippine mythology.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I suppose at the end of the day, it is a heritage to the human race for
Yeah,
that came from our islands, 'di ba?
yeah,
Pa- 'Di ba? That's a heritage. Hmm. All right. Oh, nga no. Kasi
yeah,
it's really hard to if you're gonna be technical, there are moving parts that you wouldn't realize until you really put your mind into it. Na
yeah,
pag-iisipan mo mabuti. Tama, tama.
yeah.
Hmm. Okay. So, how about the implications ng ng in modern times, these uh these myths, how did it affect our culture up until now, in your opinion?
Right now, it's a lot of like I said, there are people and organizations that like to spread misinformation to help bolster up the topic, like the story of Sidapa and Bulan. It's this Bicolano story where Sidapa, the death god, and Bulan, the god of the moon, were a homosexual couple that lived in Mount Pajas. And because of, and like when you do research on it, like Kuta Song Project, they have an entire article dedicated to it. But that myth didn't exist until 2000, until the mid 2000s, because someone put it up on a blog, and it just like kept eating itself. So they're like, everyone used that as a source, but it wasn't an actual source. But the story sounded good to a lot of people, and they liked it. So I think that there's a post that's still being shared about that on Facebook. Otherwise, there are actually gods that adapt and reform using the names of uh, Catholicism and Islam. For example, the angel Gabriel or Jibrail took control of the domain of the winds.
Domain of the what?
From the winds.
Winds? Wind?
Because,
Hangin?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, hangin. Or San Isidro, Saint Isidore the farmer, or San Isidro Labrador. He is the patron saint of rice fields, but he might have replaced the god Idianale of the harvest. Currently, there is a big resurgence of studies and creative writing on the myths, and a lot of it is great to read, but a lot of people don't really realize what goes behind the research. Like, again, I said, when was published, who wrote it down, who was the informant, etc. They just like, oh, this is interesting, I'll take this bit, which is fine. But I feel like people should be more informed if what they're reading is more Percy Jackson than uh, Homer or Ovid. For Greeks, they were the ones that wrote down what we consider the canon Greek mythology. So it's like, yeah, it's great to see everything that's happening mythology wise, creative wise. It also makes people and the younger generation like more interested in where they came from. Like a lot of my friends that I've shared this with, they're like, oh, where's my province? Because a lot of people like me who were raised in the city, who were raised in Manila, they don't know where their roots are. And because of this, I was able to like, oh, I'll visit Iloilo a lot more. I'll try to see where these came from. Some of my friends were like went back to Pampanga. Some of them were like, oh, this is happening in Zamboanga. So I want to visit my Lola more. And it's created a great generational bridge. It's like, oh, this is interesting. Lola, can you tell me more about this story? Lolo, did you really see this thing when you were young? Or when your Lolo told you this story, did you feel scared? That sort of thing. So it's great.
Okay. Do you think we're still do you think the creation of Filipino mythologies has stopped right now? Parang,
No,
uh,
definitely not.
parang what would
Again,
the mythology ng Pilipinas ang lalabas from from let's say our this century. Sabagay, it's too early for 2000s, no? For year 20 uh, the 21st century, 'di ba? Hmm. Okay.
Uh, well, for those that are still worshipping the old gods actively, they can attribute uh, natural disasters, or they invoke the gods for protection, like for COVID. Um,
Mm.
there are those that invoke healer gods to keep their community safe. Like I said, with the Magindanaon fire goddess to help out with the Australian fires. Uh,
Mm.
they're still there. And the modern folk magic practices of worshiping the old gods, that might get more traction because there are people that actively gain visions from these old gods, so they say.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there are there's still there's still a lot that can be done and that is still being done.
Okay.
Uh, yeah,
There's a
not
natural
it's never
process,
over.
'di ba? Okay.
Yeah, it's never over.
I suppose, no? Oo nga, no? Hmm. Let's go back to the question earlier about your favorite what are the stories, mythological stories that stand out for you? Na talaga, wow, ito parang that blew you away, no, ganun. Parang, holy shit, ganun din. Ganun.
Okay. Well, my first favorite is was interesting because I never really like, it's one of the favorite stories I've ever wrote. It was mostly on this guy. It's
Oh,
a
who's that?
deer with full horns. It's called the Panigotlo.
Holy shit.
So the story goes that the Panigotlo is the favored pet of the god Gamhanan in Aklan. And one night, um, a hunter named Dagasanan killed it, and that obviously pissed the god off. So the villagers chased the hunter to a cliff and murdered him there. And now there's a tree where Dagasanan was, that overlooks the river, and like there are many drownings that happen around that part of the river. So I'm like, it was one of the first ones that really stood out to me because uh, I have a friend that's from Aklan. It was an it was a specific place in the Philippines where you could pin it to, and that just made it more real to me.
Okay.
Okay, wait. What else? There are a lot of interesting, like the devil is actually very interesting to me. There are a
Devil?
lot of, yeah, like when the Spanish brought over the devil. Like I have it's such a very interesting concept about this great uh, evil that is introduced to a new place. So
Okay.
what does he do? Right. So like there are a lot of stories that the devil what creates bridges but was stopped by priests by ringing bells. There are the devil takes the form of animals like monkeys
Mm-hmm.
to force people into temptation. Uh,
And the
there
friars
are
were teaching this, were saying this to people, ganun?
there are some that it was the friars that did it. There are others that were recorded by Americans during
Mm.
the American colonial period. Like one of the stories from there, like the devil uh, goes to rich, goes to where rich people are dying to get their souls, uh, which is like funny to
Okay.
me. There's the story of uh, hmm, it's really hard to think actually because there's just so many. The seven-headed serpent of Canlaon. Uh,
Seven-headed
there's
serpent.
so Mount Canlaon is in Negros,
Mm-hmm.
and there there's this seven-headed giant uh, hydra-like thing that came out of the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
It breathes fire. So it terrorized the kingdom of this ruler called Laon, and then a young hero named Kan, who could talk to animals, killed the serpent, and then the
How?
king rewarded him.
How did he
Okay,
kill the serpent?
so he could talk to bees. Okay, if I'm remembering right, it's bees, ants, and borers. So he used the insects to kind of blind the
The
okay,
serpents?
wait,
Or
ants, wasps, and crows. Yeah, ants, wasps, and crows. So he used those
crows? Okay.
animals and insects to
Okay.
like like go into the eyes of the serpent, or like go into its
Mm-hmm.
teeth, distracting it long enough so that Khan could decapitate each of the heads while they were distracted
Holy
by
shit.
them.
Well, he used
So it's
the
also
little creatures, no? Not the
yeah, yeah,
kalabaw sa bagay, no?
no, yeah, it's very like Disney Hercules, but
Oh
with
nga,
more
no.
blood.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool. Which is the coolest creature for you? I'm
It's not.
playing. By the way, I'm playing some old artworks that I did. I did
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, they look great.
I did
Yeah.
a series of Pinoy mythology themed artworks before.
Mm.
Okay, so which one's your favorite? The
It's not
coolest.
um it's not a single creature, it's a type of creature. It's
Okay.
the moon eaters. Cuz like
Yan. Good
yeah,
choice.
everyone most people know the Bakunawa
Mhm.
because that's plastered everywhere. The Bakunawa is mostly centered around the Visayas area.
Mhm.
If you go more north in Luzon, it's called it's a serpent called the Sawa, or the Laho, or the Lau. The Lau is interesting because it's a crocodile bird serpent hybrid.
Holy shit.
Uh,
Crocodile,
then
bird, serpent. Okay.
yeah, and then you get Raho, which is a giant human that also eats the moon. Then you go more far south in Mindanao. You get the Minokawa, as big as the island of Bohol, and its feathers are swords.
Oh
Then
nga.
you get the Tambanakano, which is a giant crab who is the child of the moon and is actively trying to eat slash murder its mother.
How
Then
does
you have
paano niya kakainin yung ng crab yung moon? Crab? A
it's
giant
giant.
crab.
Yeah, it's a
It
giant
reaches
crab.
the claw? Okay.
It tries to. Like
Does it fly?
that's why that's no, it just like it actively goes out of its home. Like he lives in a hole in the sea. So if
Okay.
he goes out, it's low tide. If he goes in, it's high tide. So yeah, he tries to swallow it uh using like claw at it.
Mhm.
It's supposed to be big enough to do that. There's also like one of my favorite is the Arimaunga. It's a celestial lion.
Wow!
So,
Wait.
so
Paano
yeah.
nagkaroon ng lion? Paano nagkaroon ng lion?
Um,
This
because
was okay.
the name may have been derived from uh, like Arimau. Is Indonesian for large cat or tiger. It also might be derived because like that part of the Philippines is influenced by Islam and
Okay, okay.
Muslim influences, and diba, like some of them have to go to the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca. So sometimes like the stories of cats and creatures,
Oh,
but
I
like
see.
from one of my informants, the guy who grew up with this story, says that the rays of the sun when the eclipse happens is the mane of the lion or the mane of the big cat. So it might be like when they finally saw a picture of a lion, they're like, "Oh, that's it." Yeah. What else? Of course, there's the Bakunawa. There's actually
Mm-hmm.
in Panay, there are two kinds of Bakunawa.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
Two kinds.
one one with see-through belly. So
Oy!
if it's a partial eclipse, it's that kind of Bakunawa. And there's the other kind of Bakunawa where it's like solid, so there's no light coming through. So if it's a full eclipse, it's that kind of Bakunawa.
Oh! May ganun pa pala.
Uh,
Well, teka,
yeah.
let me just share a little bit about the Bakunawa. Kasi Bakunawa is really my favorite talaga. I was really well, I did these series mga drawings about Philippine mythology largely because of Bakunawa, and it really parang I was really blown away when I learned about it. And the thing about that one thing also is that I haven't heard of it until I was, I think, late 20s ko na ano nalaman
Mm,
na about Bakunawa. So, what? May ganito pala, the dragons as in a dragon, and it's the coolest dragon in the world. I don't know,
yeah.
call me biased, but I think it is. 'Di ba? Kasi it's really awesome. And yan, Bakunawa. So teka, iyan na muna natin 'to. Anyway, so when Bakunawa, when I learned about Bakunawa, I was uh I was really parang bakit hindi ko alam 'to? Bakit hindi ko 'to nalaman when I was still a kid, 'di ba? Parang that was my question. And kasi it's I don't know, I think there is pride na parang in our culture, we came
Mm,
up with something like this na parang this is kasi parang we always yung imagination ng mundo, the western gods, we
mm,
hear about Zeus and the chimeras and the hydras, mga ganyan, and they're all parang wow, ang cool, 'di ba? Ang cool ng mga monsters na 'yan eh. Yung mga centaurs and the cyclopses, mga ganyan.
mm,
Pero what we have is Bakunawa. Well, the Tekbalang is really cool too, and
mm.
also aswang, 'di ba? Pero yung Bakunawa really is a special kind of monster for me, 'di ba? And it's
Yeah.
parang
The Moon Eaters are all great. Like,
mm, awesome. What do
yeah.
you think is the
Also,
origin of the Bakunawa? Yung mga stories niyan.
it's definitely taken from Hindu Buddhist belief,
Mhm.
from the myth of Rahu and Kedu. So the main story is that in Indian mythology, the gods and their demons joined together to obtain the nectar of immortality. Then the gods excluded the demons from their share, but one of the demons managed to gain the nectar of immortality, and
Okay.
it was the sun or moon that saw this and alerted the gods, and the gods severed the demon's body. So you have a head and the body, and the body is a serpent. So it's kind of that influence as well, and that it probably got localized to different areas of the Philippines, like the crab, snake, bird, uh, that sort of thing. Because like in uh, Tagalog, you have the story of the giant raho,
Mm-hmm.
which is same as rahu,
Mm-hmm.
kedu. So the beginning myth
Mm-hmm.
might be that for some of the stories, but otherwise, the other ones may have been uh, created independently.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, like uh, eclipses are like big
Mm-hmm.
events, so of
Yeah.
course you're going to tell a story about it. So some of them might be influenced by that Indian story of Rahu, and
Mm-hmm.
other ones are just like, oh, it's a giant tarantula that's trying to eat the moon.
Okay. So
Yeah,
the
that sort of thing.
the moon eating part, it's all over the world, is it? Or is there a particular region where it's most prevalent?
Oh no, it's all over the world, but it depends on the culture, on how they explain it.
Mm-hmm.
Like in like in the Philippines, it's the creature that eats it. In some other ones, like there's a story in the Bible where God made an eclipse so that uh, if I'm remembering right, the Israelites managed to win a battle. Uh,
Well, he let the sun shine for 3 or 4 days ata, parang ganun. That's one story
yeah,
that I
yeah.
remember, parang ganun.
Yeah, and like in China, it's a celestial dragon that eats the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, in Nordic lore, it's wolves
Wolves.
that eats the sun. Yeah, in Greece, it was just because the gods were pissed. Uh, I remember.
They got grumpy gods over there.
Yeah, so it's like if there's a solar eclipse, it'd be like Zeus is mad, get more sacrifices.
No, ano.
Uh, that's
Uh, are Filipino gods also that grumpy? Parang hindi, di ba? It's not.
uh
They have some issues. How would you compare the pantheon of Philippine mythology to, let's say, the Greeks na lang and Romans, para mas specific?
okay. Again, which one? Because there are one. There are like more than
Oh,
150 pantheons. Okay,
yeah.
wait. So, all right. I'll do a few. I'll do a
Okay.
few. For the Tagalogs, at least,
Okay.
uh, there are they're more helping out from day-to-day life. Like there are gods of cultivated land, there are gods of seasons,
Mm-hmm.
of temptation and rivers. So like I haven't there aren't many myths of them actively angering people,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and like uh, getting uh, annoyed at them. Then you have like ifugaos, the ones that were recorded by Barton. Uh, they have specific rituals that you have to do, or they will be pissed and then call upon disease or pestilence, or they just might kill you on the spot. Uh, then you have some of the wait, where else? I'll do one from Mindanao. Then you have some of the ones from the Bukidnon in
Mm.
Mindanao, where the most interesting ones are the ones that uh, are part of the natural order.
Mm.
Like there is what's called the intumbangol. They are two snakes that hold up the earth,
Okay.
and when they move, they cause earthquakes. When they breathe, they cause storms,
Okay.
and they are held by another god called Magbabaya. So most of their uh, gods are uh, they're the gods that are earthly contain both good and evil qualities,
Mm.
um, and uh, and as long as you respect them, as long as you like do the sacrifices, or like in some cases have specifically white chickens that you sacrifice, or 49 pieces of tobacco, that sort of thing, they'll be good to
Okay.
you. But
Mm.
there's nothing like in Greek myth where the god like Zeus actively turns into animals and starts having children everywhere. Nothing about gods, but
Okay.
in some of the epics, uh, the culture heroes do that. I think there was this one guy with like 7 children, each from different mothers.
Okay. Okay. Well, kasi sa ano sa in Greek mythology, it's almost like they're the Kardashians, eh, 'di ba? Parang there's a
Yeah.
lot of drama, there's a lot of mga mga issues. Parang I don't think we have that in or we don't have enough records lang siguro, maybe.
Yeah, and maybe like there were more active uh, participation with the gods, like especially when they could uh, talk to them more directly. Like if the spiritual advisor to the Datu would say like, don't put your forces through this mountain because I received the vision from this god that it will end badly. I
Mhm.
mean, those are the kinds of records that I would have like. I would just be super grateful to find.
Oh, let's talk about the Babaylans naman this time. What can you share about the Babaylans?
Uh, well, for Babaylans as a whole, they're really the intercessors. So they're the ones in between the spirit world and the material world. A
Okay.
lot of beliefs in the Philippines have that when you are sick, it's because your soul or one of your souls is missing.
No.
So
How
one
many
of
souls? How many souls does one person have? Daw.
uh okay, in some of uh in some cultures there are two, the left hand soul
Okay.
and the right hand soul. That's the gimoku. So like when you die, your
Oh.
uh left hand soul becomes like this aswang thing called the buso.
Holy shit.
There are some cultures where there are 7 souls.
Wow.
Um, in Yeah, so it ranges from 2 to 7, as far as I know. There may be more in other areas. So like yeah,
Seven
if you're
souls.
sick, your soul is sick, and then the babaylan has to uh, save you. Oh yeah, the 7 souls is the from Bukidnon pala.
Bukid. The, yung sa,
So
are those seven souls parang they have different personalities or what? How does that work?
uh, the souls, like, they all make you what you are. So okay, so when it's only when you are alive that you have 7 souls, and each
Okay.
of them do uh, different things. If they are all present in an individual, they you become sick. And
Okay.
each of the individual souls like has a connection to a specific area of nature. Like one soul jumps off the cliff, one soul swims in water, one soul puts its hand in snake souls, I don't, one sits under a tree, and one is walking around, that whole thing. If all the souls leave the body at the same time, then that individual dies. But if it's only one soul, then they're just sick, and they can be helped by a babaylan, or a babaylan uh, like spirit talker.
Okay. So what does the babaylan do when one of these souls go missing? So parang pag nagkasakit ka, nawawala, parang you drop one soul, ganun? Or does it die? Does it what?
It doesn't die. It wanders. So
Ah.
uh, it wanders through uh, well, what a lot of my sources say is the cosmos. So I take that to mean uh, the sky world, the lower worlds, the middle worlds, all around. And uh, yeah, so the Babylon just travels like through the astral plane. Her spirit separates from the body, goes through cliffs and mountains. In some sources, uh, the Babylon or spirit talker equivalent has help in the form of spirits. One that I know in the Manobo is the Daligmata, is this creature that has eyes everywhere all over its body. And the Babaylan uses that to help
Mhm.
her find the soul. Uh,
Oh.
Sometimes the Babaylan would shout in the cosmos. So she would shout the name of the person that is lost, and also the history of the person. So I wasn't exactly sure what that meant, but like in my head, it's like uh, that Karl Gaverza, born on this date,
Okay.
uh, son of this guy, lives in here, that sort of thing. That's what I
Mm.
imagine the Babaylans saying when they try to find the soul.
Okay. So basically, that's how, for the most part, that's how the babaylan heals the
Well,
person, the sick people.
that's one way. The other
Mm-hmm.
ways are to conduct rituals. And there
Okay.
are a lot of rituals that they can perform. The names of the rituals differ from community to community. So there are like uh, rituals for bathing the ill, for invoking the spirits for a good harvest, uh, for and one of the things the Babaylan can do that is very special is that they can be possessed by the gods or by the ancient ancestors. So they are truly the biggest connection a community has to the spirit, the spirituality of everything.
Okay. Wow. Huh. How about the, 'di ba? There's this uh yung transition of 'di ba, parang from what I know, correct me if I'm wrong. Um the Babaylands were originally all female, and then there came a time that parang yung mga gays, mga homosexuals back then, parang they were accepted to become babaylan. They were, or were they really gays, or were they just men? Ano, what do you have on that?
Um, they're okay. Cause I I don't use modern terms to
Okay.
describe things in the past. Because like when you say gay, it's in the modern context. So it's like in the LGBT community. It's that
Ah.
they have specific sexual preferences.
I see.
Uh, and like there were male babaylan equivalents. There still are now. Like
Mm-hmm.
in the Ifugao region, their spirit talkers are called the Mumbaki, or those that say prayers, and they're male.
Okay.
And but in other areas, you have uh, and this is kind of colored by the Spanish to uh, feminine men that would relinquish their uh, maleness by talking to the spirits. So it's maybe very effeminate men. Maybe their sexual preference was other men.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, there were and are males that
Mm-hmm.
talk to the spirits or perform rituals. There are actually specific rituals that can only be performed by these specific uh, male uh, spirit talkers.
Parang I read something that parang something happened, na parang nagkulang yata. Parang there was a shortage of women. I don't know. Maybe I'm just talking bullshit. Pero there was a point na parang there were no females who are maybe willing or not. Well, basically, not much females are available to become babaylan, so they got males instead. Parang ganun. I don't know.
I I don't yeah I like that's really out of my wheelhouse. The only one I know that's a male is the asog uh,
Yeah, yeah, the asog.
from
Mm-hmm.
Bicol. So he was an effeminate male who did not marry at
Mm.
all. And yeah,
I have a drawing of that. Teka. So, okay. So how so they are really essential. Parang it's ano eh, parang it's one thing that people point out when they say na parang what this when they describe the status of uh, let's just use the modern term gay men back then that
mm-hmm.
that they were actually respected or what do you think?
Because like that's putting a modern spin. Because like when you talk about modern times, the way you can say that they're part of the society is like they can marry each other. They are free to have their spouse or partner as a dependent.
Yeah.
Uh, they are free to express themselves at all times,
Mhm.
that sort of thing. But according to research I have, it's like you can only be uh, this kind of person in this specific sector of society. So I don't know if there are any records like two men could be able to live together or adopt children or on their own
I see. Well,
or
maybe mhm.
yeah.
Well, maybe not to that level, pero parang they're not. Well, I think there at least there's an opportunity for them to be recognized as somebody important in society. Maybe that's
Yeah. I mean
yeah.
like the feminine then was definitely more uh expressive, and it would and like if you're wait femininity was more accepted and more embraced even if you were a man. So it's like if you were a man then, like you could uh become more like a woman and people wouldn't really care.
Okay, don't get judged as much. Oh, mga ganun.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I suppose that's a possibility, you know. Hmm.
But yeah,
But
but like
but it's really interesting the history of the Babaylans. Parang it's a figure in Philippine history that's that's really magical, and considering also that that aspect of a gender um related to it, it's I suppose it makes them more interesting.
And like when you look at modern, well, not modern, like hundreds of years back, Babaylan were also community leaders. There were some that uh, actively started rebellions and insurrections.
Talaga, wow,
Yeah, like
wow.
I might just tell you later, but I know there was one Babaylan that started revolution, and now she was worshipped as a god after.
When was this? Is this in
Yeah,
modern times or back in?
1800s maybe.
Wow. Ooh. Well, I could imagine kasi parang well, I don't know if that babaylan is it a female babaylan or female or a male babaylan?
I actually don't remember. That
Okay.
I'll look for it then.
Okay, okay.
Get
It's
back to you.
amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Kasi parang that's why I was really looking forward to having you on the show. Um Kasi parang these things and we barely scratch the surface of it.
Yeah.
'Di ba? And dahil 'di ba parang there's no way that we could cover this in a few hours. And but then you have already shared the tremendous amount of knowledge uh, about mythology and well, I would say culture nung during these times, and this is identity of the Filipinos. And although it's we have different traditions and cultures back then, depending on where you live in the archipelago, it's it's still a part of I think meron pa ring I don't know. I can't hindi ko ma-pinpoint how, but I'm sure may sa psyche ng Pilipino there are still remnants of this, and that's what
Mhm.
and why we act like we do right now. Even in modern times. Diba?
Yeah.
And how drastic do you think was the change compared if you're gonna compare pre-colonial quote unquote pre-colonial Philippines to when the Spanish arrived? Was it
What do you mean by different? Because again, like there were lots of polities, there were lots of uh,
did it kill the
kingdom.
how much did the how much of the these cultures of Filipino mythology died after the colonization?
Uh, I don't like honestly. I don't know because like you're not sure. Like a lot of it wasn't recorded,
Yeah,
so how can you like quantify something that you're
yeah.
just not really sure was there in the first
I see.
place.
That's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair. That's fair. Hmm. Pero right now, I suppose we will never know. No, pero
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
really now we could just well write books, write novels like what you're doing, like Skyworld is doing, like
Yeah.
Trece is doing. What do you think about these new literary works that alam mo yun kasi Filipino mythology had been one of the go-to parang stories sources of Pinoy fiction, 'di ba? At
Uh,
lalo na ngayon, parang ganun. Hmm.
I mean, they're great. I love them, but uh, it's a great starting point. Like it's a way for people to dip their feet into the water, then start going through more and more uh, heavy mythologies. Uh, like I want, if you read Tressa, if you read Skyworld, after that, your curiosity will be on overdrive. So then you pick up book after book of epics and legends, or even search them yourself by talking to the old people in your family. Because yeah, like you see what happened with Percy Jackson. Everyone got really interested with Greek mythology from that. But having said that, it's also really difficult to get the books or other sources about this. So I think it would be like, it's great that there's a network like the Trece group, different online pages, so that people can share or ask what they want to know.
Mm-hmm. Are you worried at all that some maybe some writers, some of the creators of these let's say comics or movies, that they don't research enough and alam mo yun, parang create a different version
Well,
of.
okay. As a researcher, I just look at it and I just think it's a missed opportunity. But I wouldn't gatekeep and tell them what they're doing is wrong, because as long as they say it's fiction
Mm-hmm.
and it's a creative interpretation, then who am I to interfere with their art? Because that is art. Art
Okay.
isn't, you shouldn't have sources for art. It's not a research paper. You shouldn't have like a bibliography that you have to read to appreciate a painting,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like you could appreciate it more if you read those, but it is what it is. So again, as long as people like get curious, get interested, and get pointed to good research, then yeah, they do what they do.
Cool. Ayos. So let's see. Okay, we're almost. I told you, time's gonna fly, man. We're almost.
Oh wow.
We are at 2
Okay.
hours and 40 minutes. So just a few more questions before we end the podcast. Now, uh,
Okay.
what are your favorites in sa mga ano sa mga comics na bago, and what do you think about um should kasi there was a few years ago there was a parang Hollywood was having great interest in Filipino mythology. Parang you see aswangs in
Mm.
parang series, mga series na ganyan, di ba? Parang tapos parang yun parang nawala. Di ba? What
Yeah, like there, I found like in some comics, people think that the Philippines is the same as Malaysia and Indonesia.
really? Okay.
So yeah, I saw this one comic. I forgot the title, but it was set in the Philippines, and there was a twist at the end that showed a Penanggalan, and I was like, this is Malaysia, bro. Yeah.
Well, even in ano there was this group of there was this group um well parang Phil-Am sila, and
Mm.
I don't know they I was trying to I helped them create art for an indie game, and when
Mm-hmm.
I saw their initial kasi parang I was replacing an artist they used a different artist, and yung mga ginagawa ng mga na art nila parang hindi mukhang Pilipino. 'Di ba?
Mm.
Parang the time period was in ano was in during World War II, and yung clothes nila hindi sila mukhang Pilipino, 'di ba? Parang hindi ganito, so I had to
Yeah.
redo mukhang Cambodian yung mga ano said, this is not what it is. Parang, ha? Hindi
Yeah.
ganyan yun, diba? Parang, yun. So, I helped them. And and these are these are Phil-Amps already, 'di ba? Parang
Yeah. I mean, like that's a symptom of a lot of what's happening now to like try to be the most Filipino.
mm-hmm.
Like people are going and getting indigenous weaves and fabrics, but they don't realize that what they're wearing is funeral wear. And that's happened like in fashion when when a weaver points it out and they're just like, oh no, it looks pretty on me, I'll wear it. And I'm like,
Talaga?
okay.
Which instance is that?
uh in it was in North Luzon or one of the uh Tausug, where it's something that I overheard kasi from my friend that does fashion, like the mixing and matching of everything. Uh,
Yeah.
there's this group online that, mm,
Is it on Facebook?
yeah, wait, I'm trying to remember. Uh, it it might have been an article on Esquire or okay, wait. Oh,
Ah,
okay. No, it's here. Culture. It's on Metro dot style.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Can
It's
you
like
send me the link?
where textile. Okay, wait.
Sige, sige.
Uh, okay,
Let's see. Whoop. Yeah.
there, sent it.
Whoop, ano ba yan? What the? Okay. Let's check.
Yeah, so wearing cultural
Okay,
clothes
so
responsibly.
to those who are just listening, there's a video version of this podcast that you can watch on YouTube and Facebook, and we are looking at. Actually, I've been playing videos of and some showing images. So if you don't wanna miss out on that, check out the Powerful Comics Man podcast on YouTube and video form as well. Okay, so ito yun. How to wear. Teka, ilagay natin doon sa kabilang screen. Yan. How to wear Philippine indigenous textiles responsibly, according to a textile expert. Okay, is this a fail article or not?
No, like it really digs into the topic
Ah, so,
of
so
if
tama siya.
you're
Uh,
yeah, if you're taking advantage of a specific uh, group. It's like where did it come from? Does it have a story? Is it cultural? And you have to uh, respect it. Like
mm-hmm.
there's like certain communities have to give permission for you to use textile, and like in some of those textiles it's spiritual, and sometimes they're only used for specific cultural events,
Oh,
like I said,
okay.
funerals or
Okay.
births or marriages. And it's become trendy now to wear it,
Okay.
and people just use it because they think it looks good. It's like fangod for tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
People just get them as an experience, or because they want to capitalize on that experience, show like conspicuous consumption. Oh, I did this, look how cool I am.
Yeah.
But like that, the tattoo has a specific meaning, or like in olden times these tattoos would have been earned.
Yeah, oo
But
nga eh. Parang,
all
ngayon it's
right,
just for novelty, for something to just to show
yeah,
off, di ba? Oh, yeah, okay.
yeah. and like I'm this is a topic that I really take to heart because like I have a small business like this.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, this thing is made out of indigenous weaves from Abra
Okay.
in the north. So they're scrap fabrics from this place in Cebu called Antel Fabrics. They use
Okay.
indigenous textiles for uh, fashion. So like from them, I learned like where does it come from, what the story is, how do you help the community by giving them livelihood,
Mm.
and things like that. Because like I mean, if you're trying to make things Filipino, I you shouldn't leave anyone behind. Is my line of thinking. Like
I see.
you, yeah.
Are there indigenous groups who get offended when you don't when they see that you're just using their art for whatever reason? Kasi,
Without
mhm.
uh uh there was this clothing company on Facebook, I think a year or two back,
Mhm.
where they use designs from the village of Wangod in their merch.
Ah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
in
yeah. Mhm.
shirts, in caps. And then there was this whole like mess on the internet because the people didn't consult the village. That
Mm.
design wasn't from just one person. It wasn't just from Pangod. It was community owned design because I think the Facebook post about the company said that they asked permission from Pangod to use the design,
Mhm.
but they didn't consult the rest of the community, and it was
Mm.
a community owned thing. So yeah, there are
Okay.
those that would be offended if you do not respect where these came from.
I see. Hmm. Okay, so oh, well, that's no, that's I suppose that's a lesson. 'Di ba?
Mm.
That's a lesson. Huh. Ang ganda. Ang ganda ng mga ano kasi although there's also this argument, but let's say um I suppose kung ganito ka yung ka-small yung yung community, yung indigenous community, parang I suppose you can't compare it to let's say origami, 'di ba? Parang
Mm.
although it's a Japanese culture, parang it's so widely parang is it a crime to is it so bad if you parang mag to learn origami, parang ganun. I don't
As
know.
long as it's shared. I mean,
Mhm.
you had that like remember when Kim Kardashian tried to uh, trademark the word kimono?
Talaga?
Yeah, she had a fashion line
What
that
the
she named
fuck?
kimono, and she
Okay.
tried to trademark it. And like in cases like that, that's complete bullshit. But
Yeah,
if
of
you
course.
like try to respect the culture
Mhm.
and see where everything's coming from, then I don't find that there's any fault
Mhm.
in it.
There's also this I kind of I'm also a bit believer of this thing na parang cultures contribute to kumbaga one particular culture, kung ano man yung mga na-achieve nila, is their contribution to the entire human race. Parang
Mm,
may
yeah.
mga ganong ano rin parang are you really gonna parang pagdadamot mo ba yun? But then again, if you're capitalizing on parang for personal profit, I suppose that's
Yeah.
where it's gonna be the line's gonna be drawn. You need
Yeah.
to you need to recognize, not just recognize it, but properly compensate the whatever the especially indigenous cultures like Wang Odds, kasi hindi naman sila mayaman katulad ng let's say Japan, 'di ba? Parang ganun.
Yeah.
Mm. Kasi for me pa rin, whatever art, kahit for either community or personal, parang it is your contribution for as a collective ng buong mundo eh. But then again, there are certain parang may ethics involved, di ba? I suppose that's how you put it.
Yeah.
Yun. All right. Yun, so tuloy na lang natin ulit to kasi it's been I don't wanna hold you up for too long tonight. It's already 12:35 pala. Holy shit.
Yeah,
Damn.
wow.
Oh, wow. I told you, man. I told you.
Yeah.
So yun, thanks to everybody who watched. Si Jordan was mentioning a book. Well, wait. Where? Ayun yun. Huh? What? I can't find my cursor. Ayun yun. Okay, so Jordan was mentioning a book, Halimawin. Halimawin? Was that the book you mentioned?
Halimawin.
Halimawin.
No, this is a separate project. Because you know Inktober, right?
Uh-huh.
We do Halimawin. So every day is a different Halimaw. We just launched it on Amazon Kindle, but we also sell physical copies.
Whoa, let's see. Okay. Great. Teka.
So it's like every day is a different mythical creature with an illustration by Leandro Geniston.
So isang artist lang yung kinuha mo?
Yeah. Because
sasabihin ko sana ba't di mo ako tinawagan eh. Halimawin.
But and then we're also planning to launch 3 other books. One for Manananggal, one for Mermaid, and one for Bloody Maria. The last one we made up. But yeah.
Do you have a page where we can preview these books? No?
Yeah, just it's on Amazon. So go on Amazon, then search for my name.
Okay. Amazon. Well,
and
shinare pala ni ni Jordan dun sa kaso tricky pag pumunta ako dun sa page ng
it's also on our Facebook page. If you go to one of our albums, it's it should be there.
Okay. How do you get the copies aside from Amazon? Can we just
for physical copy?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, go ahead.
Kindle yung nasa Amazon.
Yes.
Okay.
And then if you want to order from us, just message us through the page. We used to ship through LBC if that's still open during the GCQ. That's how we deliver it through the Philippines.
I think it is naman.
Yeah.
Teka,
and we also have our Mythical Obscura series, which is our main that's our main book. Talaga. It collects 40 of the stories on the site.
Okay. Hindi ko makita yung link. Teka, Halimawin. Hindi ko makita. Anyway, it's there. I'll find it later. Send me the link so I can add it on the description.
Okay.
Nung podcast.
Yeah. So that's it. Those are what we're going out in our pipeline. I'd also like to mention that we regularly ask for volunteers to translate our stories into Philippine languages. So if you look through our page, the albums, you'll find Hiligaynon, Ilocano, Isneg, Bisaya, and a lot of stories in those languages.
I might know some
'Cause,
people who can help you with that. I'll message you later.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yun.
And if anyone has any questions about Philippine myths, feel free to email me or message me through the page.
Yeah, you also do talks, diba? So they can invite you as well.
Yeah, from time to time.
Mm. Not just right now kasi ECQ. After the ECQ is lifted.
Yeah.
pero, pero yeah, I look forward to meeting you in person and let's do this again here in the studio. Maybe
Sure.
next time.
Yeah.
All right. So yun muna. Mag-part 2 na lang tayo some other time. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Carl.
Thank you so much, Gerald. This is great.
Yeah, this is fantastic. I'm sure the people who watched enjoyed it as well. And yun. Thanks to everyone who watched. To those who are just catching us up, this is gonna be recorded in YouTube, Facebook, and the audio versions are gonna be up on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and Anchor, blah blah blah. Because basta kung saan saan, dami hindi ko na tanda eh. Pero yung Spotify and Apple Podcast, yun yung pinaka-popular sa Pilipinas right now. And also check out the Powerful Komiksman podcast. This is episode 94. Malapit ng mag 100. And so that means you have 93 episodes that you haven't listened to, and all of them are as awesome as this one. So again, thanks John Carl Gaverza.
Thanks.
Powerful John Carl Gaverza. Powerful Komiksman podcast. Good night.
Night. All right, thanks, Nat.